This is a continuation of The Covered Wagon by Emerson Hough, comprising chapters 35 through 37. Chapter 35, Haw, Midsummer in the Desert. The road now, but for the shifting of the sands, would have been marked by the bodies of dead cattle, in death scarcely more bone and parchment than for days they had been while alive. The horned toad, the cactus, the rattlesnake long since had replaced the prairie dogs of the grassy floor of the eastern plains. A scourge of great black crickets appeared, crackling loathsomely under the wheels. Sagebrush and sand took the place of trees and grass as they left the river valley and crossed a succession of ridges or plateaus. At last they reached vast black basaltic masses and lava fields, proof of former subterranean fires which seemingly had forever dried out the life of the earth's surface. The very vastness of the views might have had charm but for the tempering feeling of awe, of doubt, of fear. They had followed the trail over the immemorial tribal crossings, over heights of land lying between the heads of streams. From the Green River, which finds the great canyons of the Colorado, they came into the vast horseshoe valley of the Bear, almost circumventing the Great Salt Lake, but unable to forsake it at last. West and south now rose bold mountains around whose northern extremity the river had felt its way, and back of these lay fold on fold of lofty ridges, now softened by the distances. Of all the splendid landscapes of the Oregon Trail, this one had few rivals. But they must leave this and cross to yet another, though less inviting vast river valley of the series, which led them across the continent. Out of the many wagons which Jesse Wingate originally had captained, now not 100 remained in his detachment when it took the sagebrush plateaus below the Great Snake River. They still were back of the Missouri train, no doubt several days, but no message left on a cleft stick at camp cheered them or enlightened them. And now still another defection had cut down the train. Woodhull, moody and irascible, feverish and excited by turns, ever since leaving Bridger had held secret conclaves with a few of his adherents, the nature of which he did not disclose. There was no great surprise and no extreme regret when, within safe reach of Fort Hall, he had announced his intention of going on ahead with a dozen wagons. He went without obtaining any private interview with Molly Wingate. Camped for the night along the old trail. These matters nonetheless had their depressing effect. Few illusions remained to any of them now, and no romance. Yet they went on. 10 miles, 15 sometimes, though rarely 20 miles a day. Women fell asleep, babes in arms, jostling on the wagon seats. Men almost slept as they walked, ox whip in hand. The cattle slept as they stumbled on, tongues dry and lolling. All the earth seemed strange, unreal. They advanced as though in a dream through some inferno of a crazed imagination. About them now often rose the wavering images of the mirage, offering water, trees, wide landscapes, beckoning in such desert deceits as they often now had seen. One day, as the brazen sun mocked them from its zenith, they saw that they were not alone on the trail. "Look, Mother!" exclaimed Molly Wingate. She now rode with her mother on the seat of the family wagon, Jed driving her cart when not on the cow column. "See? There's a caravan!" Her cry was echoed or anticipated by scores of voices of others who had seen the same thing. They pointed west and south. Surely there was a caravan, a phantom caravan. Far off, gigantic, looming and lowering again, it paralleled the advance of their own train, which in numbers it seemed to equal. Slowly, steadily, irresistibly, awesomely, it kept pace with them, sending no sign to them, mockingly indifferent to them. Mockingly so, indeed. For when the leaders of the Wingate wagons paused, the riders of the ghostly train paused also, biding their time with no action to indicate their intent. When the advance was resumed, the uncanny pari passu again went on. The rival caravan going forward as fast, no faster than those who regarded it in a fascinated interest that began to become fear. Yonder caravan could bode no good. Without doubt it planned an ambush farther on, and this sinister indifference meant only its certainty of success. Or were there, then, other races of men out here in this unknown world of heat and sand? Was this a treasure train of old Spanish cargadores? Did ghosts live and move as men? If not, What caravan was this? Moving alone, far from the beaten trail. What purpose had it here? Look, Mother! The girl's voice rose eagerly again, but this time with a laugh in it, and her assurance passed down the line, others laughing in relief at the solution. It's ourselves, said Molly. It's the Fata Morgana. But how marvelous! Who could believe it? Indeed, the mirage had taken that rare and extraordinary form. The mirage of their own caravan, rising, was reflected, mirrored, by some freak of the desert sun and air, upon the fine sand blown in the air at a distance from the train. It was indeed themselves they saw, not knowing it, in a vast primordial mirror of the desert gods. Nor did the discovery of the truth lessen the feeling of discomfort, of apprehension. The laughter was at best uneasy, until at last a turn in the trail, a shift in the wizardry of the heat waves, broke up the ghostly caravan, and sent it, figure by figure, vehicle by vehicle, into the unknown whence it had come. "This country!" exclaimed Molly Wingate's mother. "It scares me. If Oregon's like this—" "It isn't, Mother. It is rich and green, with rains. There are great trees, many mountains, beautiful rivers where we are going, and there are fields of grain. There are homes." The sudden pathos of her voice drew her mother's frowning gaze. There, child," said she. "Don't you mind. We'll always have a home for you, your pa and me." The girl shook her head. "I sometimes think I'd better teach school and live alone." "And leave your parents? How can I look my father in the face every day knowing what he feels about me? Just now he accuses me of ruining Sam Woodhull's life, driving him away, out of the train. But what could I do? Marry him, after all. I can't. I'm glad he's gone, but I don't know why he went." "In my belief, you haven't heard or seen the last of Sam Woodhull yet," mused her mother. "Sometimes a man gets sort of peeved. Wants to marry a girl that jilts him more'n if she hadn't. And you certainly jilted him at the church door, if there'd been any church there. It was an awful thing, Molly. I don't know as I see how Sam stood it long as he did." "Haven't I paid for it, Mother?" "Why, yes, one way of speaking. But that ain't the way men are going to call theirselves paid. Until he's married, a man's powerful set on having a woman. If he don't, he thinks he ain't paid. It don't scarcely make no difference what the woman does. No, I don't reckon he'll forget. About Will Banion." "Don't let's mention him, Mother. I'm trying to forget him." "Yes? Where do you reckon he is now? How far ahead?" "I don't know. I can't guess." The color on her cheek caught her mother's gaze. "Gee wo haw! Get along, Buck and Star," commanded the buxom dame to the swaying ox team that now followed the road with no real need of guidance. They took up the heat and burden of the desert. Chapter 36. 2 Love Letters. The families are coming. Again the families. It was again the cry of the passing fur post, looking eastward at the caravan of the westbound plows. Much the same here at Old Fort Hall, on the Snake River, as it was at Laramie on the North Platte, or Bridger on the waters tributary to the Green. The company clerks who looked out over the sandy plain saw miles away a dust cloud which meant but one thing. In time they saw the Wingate train come on, slowly, steadily, and deploy for encampment a mile away. The dusty wagons, their double covers stained, mildewed, torn, were scattered, where each found the grass good. Then they saw scores of the emigrants, women as well as men, hastening into the post. It was now past midsummer, around the middle of the month of August, and the Wingate wagons had covered some 1,280 miles since the start at mid-May of the last spring. More than 3 months of continuous travel, a trek before which the passage over the Appalachians, 2 generations earlier, wholly pales. What did they need, here at Fort Hall, on the Snake, third and last settlement of the 2,000 miles of toil and danger and exhaustion? They needed everything. But one question first was asked by these travel-sick, home-loving people. What was the news? News. How could there be news when almost a year would elapse before Fort Hall would know that on that very day, in that very month of August, 1848, Oregon was declared a territory of the Union? News? How could there be news when these men could not know for much more than a year that, as they outspanned here in the sage, Abraham Lincoln had just declined the governorship of the new territory of Oregon? Why? He did not know. Why had these men come here? They did not know. But news. The news. The families must have the news. And here, always there was news. Just beyond branched off the trail to California. Here the supply trains from the Columbia brought news from the Oregon settlements. News. How slow it was, when it took a letter more than 2 years to go one way from edge to edge of the American continent. They told what news they knew. The news of the Mormons of 1847 and 1848. The latest mutterings over fugitive Negro slaves. The growing feeling that the South would one day follow the teachings of secession. They heard in payment the full news of the Whitman massacre in Oregon that winter. They gave back in turn their own news of the battles with the Sioux and the Crows. The news of the new army posts then moving west into the plains to clear them for the whites. News? Why, yes. Large news enough. And on either hand, so the trade was fair. But these matters of the outside world were not the only ones of interest, whether to the post-traders or the newly arrived emigrants. Had others preceded them? How many? When? Why, yes, a week earlier 50 wagons of one train, Missouri men, led by a man on a great black horse and an old man, a hunter. Banion? Yes, that was the name, and the scout was Jackson, Bill Jackson, an old-time free trapper. Well, these two had split off for California, with 6 good pack mules, loaded light. The rest of the wagons had gone on to the Snake. But why these two had bought the last shovels and the only pick in all the supplies at old Fort Hall, no man could tell. Crazy, of course. For who could pause to work on the trail with pick or shovel, with winter coming on at the Sierra crossing? But not crazier than the other band who had come in 3 days ago, also ahead of the main train. Woodhull? Yes, that was the name, Woodhull. He had 12 or 15 wagons with him and had bought supplies for California, though they all had started for Oregon. Well, they soon would know more about the Marys River and the Humboldt Desert. Plenty of bones there, sure. But even so, a third of the trains, these past 5 years, had split off at the Raft River and given up hope of Oregon. California was much better, easier to reach and better when you got there. The road to Oregon was horrible. The crossings of the Snake, especially the first crossing to the north bank, was a gamble with death for the whole train. And beyond that, to the Blue Mountains, the trail was no trail at all. Few ever would get through, no one knew how many had perished. 3 years ago Joe Meek had tried to find a better trail west of the Blues. All lost, so the story said. Why go to Oregon? Nothing there when you got there. California now had been settled and proved 100 years and more. Every year men came this far east to wait at Fort Hall for the emigrant trains and to persuade them to go to California, not to Oregon. But what seemed strange to the men at the trading post was the fact that Banion had not stopped or asked a question. He appeared to have made up his mind long earlier, and beyond asking for shovels, he had wanted nothing. The same way with Woodhull. He had come in fast and gone out fast, headed for the Raft River Trail to California, the very next morning. Why? Usually men stopped here at Fort Hall, rested, traded, got new stock. Wanted to know about the trail ahead. Both Banion and Woodhull struck Fort Hall with their minds already made up. They did not talk. Was there any new word about the California Trail, down at Bridger? Had a new route over the Humboldt Basin been found, or something of that sort? How could that be? If so, it must be rough and needing work in places, else why the need for so many shovels? But maybe the emigrants themselves knew about these singular matters, or would when they had read their letters. Yes, of course, the Missouri movers had left a lot of letters, some for their folks back east next year maybe, but some for people in the train. Banion, Woodhull, had they left any word? Why, yes, both of them. The trader smiled, one each. To the same person, yes. Well, lucky girl. But that black horse now, the Nez Perces would give 100 ponies for him. But he wouldn't trade. A sour young man. But Woodhull now, the one with the wagons, talked more. and they each had left a letter for the same girl. And this was Miss Molly Wingate? Well, the trader did not blame them. These American girls. They were like roses to the old traders, cast away this lifetime out here in the desert. News? Why, yes, no train ever came through that did not bring news and get news at Old Fort Hall, and so on. The enclosure of the old adobe fur trading post was thronged by the men and women of the Wingate train. Molly Wingate at first was not among them. She sat, chin on her hand, on a wagon tongue in the encampment, looking out over the blue-gray desert to the red and gold glory of the sinking sun. Her mother came to her and placed in her lap the 2 letters, stood watching her. "One from each," said she sententiously, and turned away. The girl's face paled as she opened the one she had felt sure would find her again, somewhere, somehow. It said, "Dearest, I write to Molly Wingate because, and only because, I know she still is Molly Wingate. It might be kinder to us both if I did not write at all, but went my way and left it all to time and silence. I found I could not. There will be no other woman in all my life for me. I cannot lay any vow on you. If I could, if I dared, I would say, wait for a year, while I pray for a year, and God help us both. As you know, I now have taken your advice. Bridger and I are joined for the California adventure. If the gold is there, as Carson thinks, I may find more fortune than I have earned. More than I could earn you gave me, when I was young. That was 2 months ago. Now I'm old. Keep the news of the gold, if it can be kept, as long as you can. No doubt it will spread from other sources, but so far as I know, and thanks only to you, I am well ahead of any other adventurer from the East this season. And as you know, winter soon will seal the trails against followers. Next year, 1849, will be the big rush, if it all does not flatten. I can think of no one who can have shared our secret. Carson will be East by now, but he is a government man, and close of mouth with strangers. Bridger, I am sure, for the odd reason that he worships you, will tell no one else, especially since he shares profits with me, if I survive and succeed. One doubt only rests in my mind. At his post I talked with Bridger, and he told me he had a few other bits of gold that Carson had given him at Laramie. He looked for them, but had lost them. He suspected his Indian women, but he knew nothing. Of course, it would be 1 chance in 1,000 that anyone would know the women had these things, and even so, no one could tell where the gold came from, because not even the women would know that. Not even Bridger does, exactly. Not even I myself. In general, I am headed for the valley of the Sacramento. I shall work north. Why? Because that will be toward Oregon. I write as though I expected to see you again, as though I had a right to expect or hope for that. It is only the dead young man, Will Banion, who unjustly and wrongly craves and calls out for the greatest of all fortune for a man, who unfairly and wrongly writes you now, when he ought to remember your word, to go to a land far from you, to forget you, and to live down his past. Ah, if I could. Ah, if I did not love you. But being perhaps about to die, away from you, the truth only must be between you and me. And the truth is, I never shall forget you. The truth is, I love you more than anything else and everything else in all the world. If I were in other ways, what the man of your choice should be, would this truth have any weight with you? I do not know, and I dare not ask. Reason does tell me how selfish it would be to ask you to hold in your heart a memory and not a man. That is for me to do, to have a memory, and not you. But my memory never can content me. It seems as though time had been invented so that, through all its aeons, our feet might run in search, one for the other. To meet, where? Well, we did meet. For one instant in the uncounted ages, there on the prairie. Well, if ever you do see me again, you shall say whether I have been indeed tried by fire, and whether it has left me clean, whether I am a man and not a memory. That I perhaps have been a thief, stealing what never could be mine, is my great agony now. But I love you. Goodbye. William Hayes Banion, to Margaret Wingate of Fort Hall in Oregon. For an hour Molly sat, and the sun sank. The light of the whole world died. The other letter rested unopened until later, when she broke the seal and read by the light of a sagebrush fire. She frowned. Could it be that in the providence of God, she once had been within one deliberate step of marrying Samuel Payson Woodhull? My darling Molly, this I hope finds you well after the hard journey from Bridger to Hull. They call it cruel to keep a secret from a woman. If so, I have been cruel, though only in poor pay for your cruelty to me. I have had a secret, and this is it. I have left for California from this point and shall not go to Oregon. I have learned of gold in the state of California, and have departed to that state in the hope of early success in achieving a fortune. So far as I know, I am the first to have this news of gold, unless a certain man whose name and thought I execrate has by his usual dishonesty fallen on the same information. If so, we two may meet where none can interfere. I do not know how long I may be in California, but be sure I go for but the one purpose of amassing a fortune for the woman I love. I never have given you up, and never shall. Your promise is mine, and our engagement never has been broken, and the mere fact that accident for the time prevented our nuptials by no means shall ever mean that we shall not find happy consummation of our most cherished desire at some later time. I confidently hope to arrive in Oregon a rich man not later than 1 or 2 years from now. Wait for me. I am mad without you, and shall count the minutes until then, when I can take you in my arms and kiss you 1,000 times. Forgive me. I have not heretofore told you of these plans, but it was best not, and it was for you. Indeed, you are so much in my thought, my darling, that each and everything I do is for you and you only. No more at present then, but should opportunity offer I shall get word to you addressed to Oregon City, which your father said was his general destination, it being my own present purpose, ultimately to engage in the practice of law, either at that point, or the settlement of Portland, which I understand is not far below. With my means, we should soon be handsomely settled. May God guard you on the way thither, and believe me, darling, with more love than I shall be ever able to tell and 1,000 kisses. Your affianced and impatient lover, Samuel Payson Woodhull. The little sagebrush fire flared up brightly for an instant as Molly Wingate dropped one of her letters on the embers. Chapter 37. Jim Bridger Forgets. What's wrong with the people, Cale? Demanded Jesse Wingate of his stout-hearted associate, Caleb Price. The sun was 2 hours high, but not all the breakfast fires were going. Men were moody, truculent, taciturn, as they went about their duties. Caleb Price bit into his yellow beard as he gazed down the irregular lines of the encampment. Do you want me to tell you the truth, Jesse? Why, yes. Well then, it seems to me the truth is that this train has lost focus. I don't know what you mean. I don't know that I'm right. Don't know I can make my guess plain. Of course, every day we lay up, the whole train goes to pieces. The thing to do is to go a little way each day, get into the habit. You can't wear out a road as long as this one by spurts. It's steady, does it? But I don't think that's all. The main trouble is one that I don't like to hint to you, especially since none of us can help it. Out with it, Cale. The trouble is the people don't think they've got a leader. Jesse Wingate colored above his beard. That's pretty hard, said he. I know it's hard, but I guess it's the truth. You and I and Hall and Kelsey, we're accepted as the chief counsel. But there are 4 of us, and all this country is new to all of us. The men now are like a bunch of cattle ready to stampede. They're nervous, ready to jump at anything. Wrong way, Jesse. They ought to be as steady as any of the trains that have gone across. 1843 when the Applegates crossed. 1846 when the Donners went, every year since. Our folks, well, if you ask me, I really think they're scared. That's hard, Cale. Yes, hard for me to say to you, with your wife sad and your girl just now able to sit up. Yes, it's hard. Harder still since we both know it's your own personal matter, this quarrel of those 2 young men, which I don't need explain. That's at the bottom of the train's uneasiness. Well, they've both gone now. Yes, both. If half of the both were here now, you'd see the people quiet. Oh, you can't explain leadership, Jesse. Some have it, most don't. He had. We know he had. I don't suppose many of those folks ever figured it out, or do now. But they'd fall in. not knowing why. As it is, I'll admit, there seems to be something in the air. They say birds know when an earthquake is coming. I feel uneasy myself, and don't know why. I started for Oregon. I don't know why. Do you suppose? The speculations of either man ceased as both caught sight of a little dust cloud far off across the sage, steadily advancing down the slope. And who's that, Jesse? Commented the Ohio leader. Get your big glass, Jesse. Wingate went to his wagon and returned with the great telescope he sometimes used, emblem of his authority. 1 man, 2 packs, said he presently. All alone so far as I can see. He's Western enough. Some post-trapper, I suppose. Rides like an Indian and dressed like one. But he's white, because he has a beard. Let me see. Price took the glass. He looks familiar. See if you don't think it's Jim Bridger. What's he coming for? 200 miles away from his own post. It was Jim Bridger, as the next hour proved, and why he came he himself was willing to explain after he had eaten and smoked. I camped 12 mile back, said he, and pushed in this morning. I just had an idea I'd saunter over in here, see how you was getting along. Is your hull train made here? No, Wingate answered. The Missouri wagons are ahead. Is Woodhull with you? No. Where's he at? We don't know. Major Banyan and Jackson, with a half-dozen packs, no wagons, have given up the trip. They've split off for California, left their wagons. And so has Sam Woodhull, huh? We suppose so. That's the word. He took about 15 wagons with him. That's why we look cut down. Rest of ye going on through, huh? I am. I hope the others will. It's 3 days on to where the road leaves for California, on the Raft River. Maybe more'll leave you thar, huh? We don't know. We hope not. I hear the fords are bad, especially the crossing of the Snake. This is a big river. My people are uneasy about it. Yes, it's bad enough, right often. Thar's falls in them canyons hundreds of feet high, making a roarin' ye kin hear 40 mile, mebbe. The big ford's around 200 miles ahead. That'd make me 400 mile away from home, and 400 to ride back again, huh? Is that fur enough for a ol' man, with snow comin' on soon? You don't mean you'd guide us on that far? What charge? I come for that, mainly. Charge ye? I won't charge ye nothin'. What do ye suppose Jim Bridger'd care if ye all was drownded in the Snake? Ain't there plenty more pilgrims where ye all come from? Won't they be out here next year with money to spend with my pardner Vasquez and me? Then how could we pay you? Ye can't. Where's Miss Molly? You want to see her? Yes. Else why'd I ask? Come, said Wingate, and led the way to Molly's little cart. The girl was startled when she saw the old scout, her wide eyes asking her question. Mornin', Miss Molly, he began, his leathery face wrinkling in a smile. Ye didn't expect me, and I didn't neither. I'm glad you're about well of that arrer wound. I carried a arrowhead under my shoulder blade several years oncet, until Preacher Whitman cut hit out. Hit felt right crawly all the time till then. Yes, I just sauntered up couple 100 mile this mornin', Miss Molly, to see how ye all was gettin' along, one thing or another. Without much regard to others, he now led Molly a little apart and seated her on the sage beside him. Will Banyan and Bill Jackson has went on to Californy, Miss Molly, said he. You know why? Molly nodded. You'd orto, you told him. Yes, I did. I know. Him and me had a talk. Owin' you and me all he'll ever make, he allowed to pay nothin'. Which is, admittin' he loves you, he don't take no advice, ter finish that weddin' with another man substituted. No, says he. I can't marry her because I love her, says he. Now that's crazy. Something deep under that, Miss Molly. Let's not talk about it, please. All right. Let's talk her about Sam Woodhull, huh? No. Then maybe I'd better be goin'. I know you don't want to talk her about me. His wrinkling smile said he had more to tell. Miss Molly, said he at last, I mout as well tell ye. Sam Woodhull is on the way atter Will Banyan. He's like enough picked out a fine bunch of horse thieves to go along with him. He knows somethin' about the gold. I just found out how. You see, some men ain't above shinin' up to a Injun woman even, such bein' mebbe lonesome. Sam Woodhull wasn't. He seed one of my family wearin' a shiny thing on her neck. Hit were a piece of gold kit give me atter I give you mine. He trades the woman out of her necklace, for all of 2 pesos Mexican. But she not talking Missouri, and him not talking Shoshone. They don't get fur on where the gold come from. She done told him she got hit from me, but he don't say a word to me about that, he's too wise. But she did tell him how Will Banion gets some mules and packs of me. From then, plain guessin', he allows to watch Banion. My woman keeps sayin', not meanin' no harm, that thar's plenty more necklaces in Calfer, because she's heard me and Banion say that word, Californy. Slim guessin' hit were, Miss Molly, but enough for a man keen as Sam. That's not particular, neither. His plan was to watch where the packs went. He knowed if Banion went to Oregon he'd not use packs. Huh, fine time he'll have, follerin' that boy and them mules with wagons. I'm easier when I think of that. Because, Miss Molly, if them 2 does meet away from friends a both, there's going to be trouble, and trouble only a one kind. Again Molly Wingate nodded, pale and silent. Well, a man has ter take keer o' his own self, went on Bridger. But that ain't all near most what brung me here. What was it then? Demanded Molly. A long ride. Yeah, 800 mile out and back, if I see ye across the Snake, like I allow I'd better do. I'm doin' hit for you, Miss Molly. I'm ol' and you're young. I'm a wild man, and you're one of God's wimmern. But I had sisters oncet. White they was, like you. So the 800 mile is light. But that ain't why I come neither, or all why yit. What is it then you want to tell me? Is it about him? Bridger nodded. Yes, the only trouble is I don't know what it is. Now you're foolish. Sure I am. If I had a few drinks of good liquor, mebbe I'd be foolisher, wiser. Leastways, I'd be more like I was when I plumb forgot what 'twas Kit Carson said to me when we was spreein' at Laramie. He had something ter do, something he was goin' ter do, something I was ter do for him, or me be so, next season, atter he got east and got things done he was goin' ter do. You see, Kit's in the army. Was it about him? That's what I can't tell. I just sauntered over here a few 100 mile ter ask ye what you suppose it is that I've plumb forgot, me not havin' the same kind of liquor right now. When me and Bill was havin' a few afore he left, I was right on the pin of rememberin' what it was I was forgettin'. I don't make no doubt. Ef Kit and me or Bill and me could only meet and drink a long day or so, hit'd all come plain to me. But all by myself and sober and not sociable with dang your eyes just now, I swar, I can't think of nothin'. What's a girl's mind for if hit hain't to think of things? It was about him? It was about Kit Carson, something he had. Was it about the gold news? Mebbe, I don't know. Did he, Mr. Banion, say anything? Mostly about you and not much. He only said if I ever got any mail to send it to the judge in the Willamette settlements. He does expect to come back to Oregon. How can I tell? My belief, he'd better jump in the Pacific Ocean. He's a damn fool, Miss Molly. Ef a man loves a woman, that's something that never ought to wait. Yet he goes teeterin' around like he had from now to doomsday to marry the girl which he loves too much for to marry her. That makes me sick. Yet he has resemblances to a man, too, some ways. Faint resemblances, yes. For instance, I'll bet a gunflint these here people that's been hearin' about the ford of the Snake'd be a hull lot gladder if they knew Will Banion was erlong, huh? Molly Wingate was looking far away, pondering many things. Well, anyways, it's even Steven for them both too now, went on Bridger. And may God protect the right and the devil take the himamostest. They'll like enough both marry Injun Wyman and settle down in Californy, out of sight, out of mind. Love me little, love me long. Lord Lovell, he's mounted his milk-white steed. Farewell, sweet sir, partin' is such sweet sorrer. Like old Captain Bonneville uster say, but all the messes any fool bunch of pilgrims ever got in her, this is the worstest, and hit couldn't be no worser. Now, Miss Molly, you're a plum disappointment ter me. I just drapped in ter see if ye couldn't tell me what hit was Kit done told me, but ye can't. Where is your boasted superiorness as a woman? But now, me, havin' did 40 mile a day over that country yon, I need sustenance, and I'm going to see if old Cap Grant, the post-trader, has ary bit of Hudson Bay rum left. Ef he has, hit's mine, and ef not, Jim Bridger's a liar, and that I say deliberate. I'm gonna try to get into normal condition enough for to remember a few plain, simple truths, seein' as you all can't. Way hit is, this train's in a hell of a fix, and hit couldn't be no worser. This concludes the 10th part of 12 total of The Covered Wagon by Emerson Hough, produced by Best Audiobooks for free.